All right, getting all set here. Mic levels look good. There's our lovely little logo there. Today, on the BRP, hashtag BRP, we will discuss what was that game against the Blackhawks. That was absolutely insanity. And we'll talk as well as tonight against the Islanders. Dude, it's 90s night, man. Totally tubular. I love those jerseys. We'll also talk Jay Bouwmeester, who actually spoke publicly in a press conference yesterday for the first time since having his, I think it's still called a cardiac episode, so we'll leave it at that. And we'll just get to anything else on my brain that's either hockey or sports related. If you know what this is, start getting it trending. Hashtag BRP. This is the Blues Rants podcast. Let's get going. Yes, hello and welcome to the Blues Rants podcast. I am your host, Philip Miller, on this lovely February 27th. We've got puck drop in 1 hour. The Blues, the Islanders, at home, Enterprise Center. You can find all of that and more on Fox Sports Midwest on ESPN 101. But for right now, we're streaming to you live from Twitter, live from youtube.com/Blues Rants podcast. Let's just jump right into the show. Where to begin with all of that? Let's talk Chicago Blackhawks and St. Louis Blues. The rivalry as old as time itself, or as old as 1967. What a wild, wild win. What a gross win. What an ugly win. But what a wild win for St. Louis. 6-5 the final. That was their fifth win in a row. I got to pull out my notes to make sure I get every single thing right on this because, my word, the back and forth game this was. So, just a mere 33 seconds in, Brayden Schenn on the power play thanks to Schwartz and Perron. That got the Blues rolling on the board quickly. They score quickly on the power play. Then so do the Blackhawks. Duncan Keith takes the puck and shoots it faster than I can even describe it to put them up 1-1. With just about a little under 10 minutes remaining in the game. That was his 100th goal of the season. 100th goal of his career. I know Duncan Keith's been sitting on that one for a long time. It feels like he's been on that for a long time. He gets that from Taves for the power play goal. Later on, it's Murphy from Taves again. Another late power play goal. That's 2 for 2 now. And they go into the second period with a 2-1 lead. Then right after that, Patrick Kane again with another power play goal. Again, 3 power play goals in this game. They were 3 for 4 on said power play. After, I think they said the stat on NBCSN. I think they were 2 for 28 in their previous games. 2 for 28 in their previous games. They get 3 on the Blues tonight. However, Blues answer back. Robert Thomas gets a goal from David Perron, and it's 3-2 going into the third period. Then the third happens, and what in the hell happened there? Absolutely everything goes bananas. Ryan O'Reilly almost gets a goal on a wide open net for a wraparound that just slides across the crease. Then he almost gets another one, only for it to be waved off because he quite literally batted it into the net. And as you know, hockey is, you can't use your hands to touch the puck, so that was no goal. But then, finally, O'Reilly does get one. O'Reilly finally gets the equalizer from Brayden Schenn and Jaden Schwartz. The Jaden Shasky boys. Try to say that 3 times fast. Then, a mere 20 seconds later, Zach Sanford gets another one from Robert Thomas. Another slick, pretty goal from Zach Sanford. I'm going to talk about Zach Sanford in a minute, and y'all are going to laugh at me because I know my opinion on him has done a complete 180, like most Blues fans, but I'm going to talk about him anyway. Then, interesting thing here, the Blackhawks immediately call their timeout, and that was the right call because immediately after that timeout, the Blackhawks settle down and they kind of take control of the game from that point on. So 5:16 into the period, is it Jonathan Highmore? Zach Highmore takes the lead away from the Blues, ties the game after 2 goals in 20 seconds, and then ties the game 4-4. Then later, power play goal for 3 power play goals for the first time since, I'm trying to remember the day that the Blackhawks got it, but oh my goodness gracious. 3, like I just mentioned, 3 power play goals in this one game alone from Brandon Saad. That would end up giving them the lead this time, 5-4. Then the Blues finally get a power play, and I'm like, oh man, they're finally turning things around. This is the right time to get it. And finally they do, because there were a few times, and I believe it was I think it was the Zach Sanford goal early in the third, or maybe the Robert Thomas goal in the second, where their zone time and their zone possession was dominant. It was what we've seen from the Blues that's worked so well. I want to say sometimes it was as much as 90 seconds to 120 seconds of continuous zone possession time. Justin Falk blasts one from the point, and it goes in. A good goal by Justin Falk. I know we rip him a lot on this show. I know a lot of Blues fans rip him a lot publicly, but it was still a good goal by Justin Falk. Power play goal for the Blues. Then later on, it's everybody's favorite Blue since the All-Star break, Zach Sanford on the power play again. Robert Thomas, probably everybody's second favorite Blue since the All-Star break, gets the assist. Robert Thomas and Zach Sanford combined for 3 goals, 3 assists, 6 points in total between the two of them. Zach Sanford, I also realized he had a career high 9 shots on net in this game. 9 shots on net was his career high. Do you guys remember, I don't know, a week and a half ago when Zach Sanford did this little thing called score 4 goals in one game? And his career high was 9 shots? This kid is something else right now. But he manages to get 2 goals on 9 said shots. Another power play goal for the St. Louis Blues. I believe they went 3 for 5, if I'm trying to remember correctly. I just got back from work. Okay, give me a second here. Yes, they were 3 for 4. The Blackhawks were 3 for 4 in the power play. The Blues were 2 for 4. Zach Sanford getting 1 and Braden Shen getting 1 at the very beginning. Another late power play for the Chicago Blackhawks. It's the only one that the Blues kill. It's just get a 6-5 wild win. 11 total goals in the game. And again, not a pretty one at all for the St. Louis Blues. Like Zach Sanford said, they're fun. They're great to be a part of. Reminds you of the days of the 80s and the 90s when, you could buy goals for pennies. Duncan Keith's was at the blue line. Murphy's was a bit lower, but I still think above the face-off hash marks. A lot of them, sometimes it was just being a bad screen off of somebody. Some of them I do think Jordan Binnington would have liked back, especially some of the goals early in that game in the first and second periods. The one that I know the one that bothered me probably the most was Murphy's goal that came from Taze. Because if I remember correctly, it's Jonathan Taze and Ryan O'Reilly on the faceoff. 2 of the top guys in the league on faceoffs. And Jonathan Taze ends up winning this. They were saying, oh yeah, it's rare for Ryan O'Reilly to win the faceoff because he's winning an astounding, I want to say 65 to almost 70% of his faceoff this year. That's uncanny. I'm pretty sure that's leading the league, but oh my goodness gracious. I don't think we talk about that aspect of Ryan O'Reilly's game enough. Despite all the other incredible stuff that he does. I don't think we talk about his faceoff numbers enough. But Jonathan Taze wins the faceoff against Ryan O'Reilly. It gets up back to the point for Murphy. And I'm looking at the replay. I'm going, where is anybody? Where is anybody on Jonathan Toews right now? Jonathan Toews is 2 inches in front of Jordan Binnington, and there's no one. There's no one around him. If they can keep zooming out on the play, and you just keep going and going, and there's no Blues there. There's no blue next to Jonathan Toews. There's no blue next to Jonathan Toews. I understand it was on the power play. I understand it was 5-on-4, but you cannot let a guy like that get right in front of Jordan Binnington. If Jordan Binnington makes that save, if Jordan Binnington somehow miraculously makes that save, we understand and we know that his rebound control has not been very good basically since the All-Star break. If Jordan Binnington saves that, likely he's not getting a hand of the rebound, and Toews is just scoring that anyway. I wasn't super pleased about that, but obviously they started to come around in the second period. Then they really turned on the Jets in the third period. 4 goals in the third. The score was 3-2 at the end of the second. It wound up being 5-6 in regulation. Absolute nutso of a game. I'm hoping we don't see anything quite like that tonight against the New York Islanders. To segue into tonight's game, which, as I said before, will be on ESPN 101 and Fox Sports Midwest for anybody who's interested in watching the game. Puck drop in just about 50 minutes, if I'm looking at my clock correctly, and I know that the Blues never like to start the games on time. And I mean actually on time, not like effort-wise or anything. Like, they just never get to a puck drop at 7 p.m. But the Blues facing off against the Islanders. The Islanders took a little bit of a dip here in the midway, during the midway point of this season. I believe they're still in a wild card spot. 35, 20, and 7. Not very different from the St. Louis Blues record. But obviously, I think the main storyline coming out of Long Island is the recent trade deadline. They pick up former Devils captain Andy Green in a decent trade, and then they get Jean-Gabriel Pageau. Now, Jean-Gabriel Pageau played in his first game, I believe it was against the Rangers, actually, rather ironically, and he had a great game. He had a fight. He scored a goal. He looked solid. As I still wrote in my article, which you can find on bluesrants.com, the winners, losers, and in-betweens of the draft, they paid a hell of a lot. I think they paid a first, a second, and a third-round pick to Ottawa for Jean-Gabriel Pageau. Not super thrilled with that move. Again, I try to gauge some of these high-profile trades, like for a guy like Mark Stone. Or you could go back even further for a guy like, I don't know, Kevin Shattenkirk, or for TJ Oshie. Now, TJ Oshie was an awful trade, god-awful trade. Now, I say that, and I think our return was Zach Sanford, Phoenix Copley, and a pick. But this one in particular, I really did not like this trade. I like the extension. I'm okay with the extension. I believe it's $5 million a year for Jean-Gabriel Pageau for the next, I want to say 6 years, 6 or 7 years. But again, I feel like with these high-profile trades, it's hard to gauge them until you see how they do as a player. Like Taylor Hall. We're probably calling the Taylor Hall trade a bad trade now because he's done, honestly, very little on the Arizona Coyotes. I mean, how much are we talking about Taylor Hall now that he's with Arizona? We were probably talking about him most when he was with the Devils, when, of course, he went on that Hart Trophy season, or that league MVP season. But Taylor Hall still just sitting at 25 points on the year. That's not with Arizona. That's in total. I'm pretty positive that's true. But he's a -5 on the ice right now. With Arizona is, I think they're out of a playoff spot now. They've been struggling lately. I think they only have 5 wins since the All-Star break. They've been struggling pretty hard. Similarly to the Blues, they've really had their ups and downs, especially with Darcy Kemper out for so long. And I think Darcy Kemper is finally back. But for me, I don't know how much I can really judge this trade for JGP until I really start to see what his numbers look like for New York and what I see his numbers if New York makes the playoffs. I think that's going to be probably the biggest thing, is how well does he do in the playoffs, because New York, just like St. Louis, is not a high-scoring team. They're really split amongst their forwards, and they don't have, any particular superstar. Yes, of course, they've got Josh Bailey, Matt Barzal, Brock Nelson that are all killing it. But aside from John Gabriel Pageau, who they just picked up, Brock Nelson is their only skater with 20-plus goals. He is now the only skater, he is the second. There's two skaters on New York Islanders with 50-plus points. Matt Barzal and Brock Nelson. 54 and 50, respectively. That's not entirely far off from the Blues by any means. But again, they find a lot of scoring, within some of their depth, and they really try and distribute it. So, you have Anders Lee with 19, Matt Barzal and Anthony Beauvillier with 18, Jordan Eberle with 14, Josh Bailey with 13, Derek Brassard and Casey Cizikas with 10. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 forwards that have 10-plus goals. That's actually not the worst thing to have. And again, I think, maybe they might be regretting letting a guy like Philip Grubauer go. Semyon Varlamov has been good. He's actually got a really great save percentage, .918. But he's got a 19, 12, and 5. That's all right. Thomas Greiss, again, he's got to be like the best backup in the NHL. 16, 8, and 2. He's got a .916 save percentage. So they're averaging a .917. They're averaging 2.56 goals against. Pretty good numbers for the goaltenders. And yet we're still here. The Islanders are 23rd in goals for, yet they're 3rd in goals against. This, in my opinion, these guys are the Eastern version of the St. Louis Blues. They don't score an awful lot. They distribute it amongst all of their forwards and their depth forwards and their depth players. And they've got goaltending that's good, not phenomenal, not Vezina level, not Boston Tuukka Rask and Yaroslav Halak level, but it's still been good. Jordan Binnington likely getting the nod in net tonight. He's 28, 11, and 7 with a .911 percentage. And I want to talk about that in a second, by the way, now that I look at the numbers. But they lost in overtime way back at the beginning of the season. Not a very stellar result. That was still when the Blues were in quote unquote hangover mode, and then they dropped back-to-back games against Montreal, and we had the closed door meeting, and then they went on to go and win like 8 in a row. But for the St. Louis Blues, I am really excited to see how they actually get the job done tonight, because it looked like they had gone back to their game there against New Jersey, against Arizona, especially against Dallas. But the 2 games against Minnesota and Chicago, they allowed over 30 shots. And the game in Chicago, obviously, they allowed 5 goals. Now, that being said, it's Chicago. Every single time the Blues play Chicago, it's going to be a heated rivalry, and it's going to be probably high-scoring action because Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews are literally 2 of the 2 guys that have scored more on St. Louis than any other player in the NHL right now. It's incredible. Look up their numbers against St. Louis specifically. It's been wild. And also, by the way, I have to, gosh, this pissed me off. I have to apologize because I was advertising in my little impromptu live stream on our Twitter at BluesRantsCom that this was going to be the game where it was an all-female broadcast. And I was actually really pumped for that. I was excited for that. It was something new. It was something different. Whether or not it was good or bad, whether or not you have your opinions on male or female broadcasters, I wanted to see how it turned out. I was excited. And then I turn on the TV, and it's Gordon Miller and Pierre Maguire. Two definitely, definitely the B team, maybe even the C team for NBCSN. I'll refute. I can only tolerate Pierre Maguire when he's with Gord Miller. So if you're going to do that NBCSN, just keep those two together, and then maybe I'll actually turn on the audio. But then I turned that on, and I was just like, oh, well, wait, then what the hell am I missing? Turns out we also play the Blackhawks March 8th in Chicago, and that's supposed to be the one, in my opinion, from what I understand, that's the one that's supposed to be the one with the all-female broadcast. We seriously have two games against the Chicago Blackhawks, both being televised nationally. Really? Really? Okay, so I felt a little dumb after turning on the TV and realizing that, but I was driving. I was on my way home. It was the last thing on my mind. I was celebrating my brother's birthday and my father's birthday and everything. My brother is 16, and I'm only freaking out a little bit. That makes you feel old. Whenever you have that sibling that finally gets to the driving age, that gets to the ID age, that's when you go, okay, yeah, I might be getting a little bit old here. This should not be happening. But again, this game, supposedly with the all-female broadcast, is supposed to be, I believe, on March 8th, on Sunday at 6:30. So, but tonight against the Islanders, I'm sure the number one thing that they addressed in practice yesterday was PK. PK was real solid leading up to that game against the Blackhawks. As I said, they almost doubled the amount of power play goals that they've seen in months. Blues have to work on that penalty kill. Now it doesn't help when you've got Marco Scandella taking the first penalty and Duncan Keith scoring faster than I can even describe it to you right now. However, I want to see the defensive side, specifically on the penalty kill, get a lot better. I'm hoping that their numbers improve in terms of the shots. Again, they allow 30 shots on net. At some point, even though I wasn't pleased with the defensive effort, at some point, especially now that we're getting to the playoffs and we're less than 20 games away from that, I'm getting a little bit worried about Jordan Binnington. Starting to get a little nervous about Jordan Binnington. Again, I thought he had some great bounce-back performances. Obviously, he got back-to-back shutouts against New Jersey and Arizona, but he also wasn't really challenged much. Now, again, I prefer the type of playoff level hockey in the Arizona game where you're not allowing a lot of shots, and neither are they, and you have a score that's 1-0 rather than a score that's 6-5. That's just me. But all at the same time, there's going to be games, especially like against Boston last year, where you might get dummied. And when that happens, are you going to have the guys like Sanford and Thomas and Oscar Sundqvist, who I believe were the best players by far on the ice in that game, to rally back and basically do what they did in that game and score 4 goals in the third period? It's asking a lot, especially of a team that doesn't score a lot of goals. I could be speaking about New York. I could be speaking about St. Louis right now. I like the fact that seems like the cohesion is there, and it's much better after that huge funk that we went in through after the All-Star break. David Perron finally gets a goal against Dallas. He got 2 points in the game against Chicago. He's on a little bit of a drought, but I'm not worried about too much about that. Ryan O'Reilly finally gets a goal. He has been on a bit of a drought, and I want him to get, obviously I wanted him to be scoring more like the rest of us did, And I just thought, oh, well, you know what? We were probably spoiled because he matched a career high. He's more of an assister. He does have 44 assists on the season. That's pretty high up amongst all NHL players. But his career low, if you consider him playing for a full season, is 8 in his rookie season. He's got 12 this year through 64 games. So, not exactly the best pace you want to see from Ryan O'Reilly for scoring goals, but you can see that he's still doing pretty much everything that he's asked of right. His faceoff percentage, as I said, is still stellar. He's got 63 takeaways this season. He's got 37 shot blocks. Again, I'm not incredibly worried about Ryan O'Reilly's production. It's still there. He has had no signs of slowing down. Still showing that he has an incredible, probably the best hockey IQ on the ice, no matter what team is also playing. But it all ties back to what's going to happen when we get to the playoffs. We're going to either have to step up for Jordan Binnington. We're either going to have to step up for Jay Bouwmeester, who's no longer in. Again, Marco Scandella's game, not great against the Chicago team, but I still liked some of it. But again, obviously, I think the number one thing will start with the PK. I don't like reusing this every single game, but get on the board first. Get on the board early. Specifically against a team like New York. So against Chicago, it obviously the wheels came off and it turned into a track meet or whatever you want to call it, a shootout going both directions. That ended up being a 1-goal game. I don't see that happening against the New York Islanders tonight. I see a much tighter game. I hope to see a much tighter game defensively from St. Louis tonight, especially against the New York Islanders team that is desperate and hungry and fighting for every single point they can to get into the playoffs tonight. Again, just my opinion on that. As far as everything else goes, once again, Jordan Binnington in net, I'm hoping he has a much better performance than the last game against Chicago because he was okay. He wasn't great. He was okay. He made 25 saves on 30 shots. But again, I think it initially starts with a PK. I think it starts with tightening up things defensively in the zone. I liked seeing that the faceoff numbers are back up, and that's not just because of Ryan O'Reilly. I think even in the New Jersey and the Arizona game, and maybe even the Dallas game, I'd have to check the numbers. But in those 3 games, I know the faceoff numbers, even though they were pretty resounding wins, were still pretty terrible. And when you look at a guy like Ryan O'Reilly and you see that his numbers are still astronomical, that makes you go, okay, where's Robert Thomas? Okay, where's Tyler Bozak? Okay, where's Oscar Sundqvist? Like, we got to get some better numbers in the faceoff dot from those guys. Because that's all just more contribution to how the Blues play. If you get offensive zone time and you get a shot that the goaltender saves, well, then that's a new faceoff. That's just another way to get started. But it obviously has to start with the Blues winning that faceoff. So faceoff numbers are starting to get back up to par. I like that. Continue that. Penalty kill needs to be solid. Defensive play in front of your goaltender needs to be solid. And the goaltender needs to be solid. Simple as that. So I'll leave it to all of that. I will transition before we continue on. We got 30 minutes left until puck drop against the Islanders, once again being on Fox Sports Midwest and on ESPN 101. Jay Bouwmeester sat down in front of media yesterday and spoke briefly about his condition, how he was feeling, what some of his future outlooks were. Here's Jay Bouwmeester yesterday speaking in front of St. Louis media.
Does that include your hockey future? Is that settled at the moment, or do you still have to evaluate that?
Yeah, there's been a lot going on. I think that's something I'm definitely going to have to evaluate, but to say I've done that, I wouldn't say fully yet.
Yeah,
obviously there's decisions that I'm gonna have to make, but, that'll come later.
Yeah, just to help or clarify, Jay and I have spoken over the last week or so, and we both understand that he won't participate this year in the regular season or playoffs for us. We talked about longer-term things that may or may not happen, and both feel that, it's February. You don't have to make long-term decisions at this point, and so he's going to take time. Again, be around the team, and he'll address those things as the summer progresses.
Jay, what did it mean to you that just all the support you got from around the hockey world, the entire league, and to have your dad there with you as well?
Yeah, the outreach and the support that people have shown has been pretty overwhelming. The actual where this took place and the people that were around at the time, as well as my dad being there on the trip, there were a lot of things that were absolute best case scenario. Having him there just when people don't know what's going on, as far as family, my family, and my wife, my mom, people like that who were able to get in touch with him, and he was able to kind of relay that information was extremely helpful for everybody, and for me, to have someone like a parent or that you're close with there for that support was great. But the support that people have shown has been pretty humbling. I mean, it goes to show you it's sort of the hockey community and how people really do care about each other, and it's a small world, but I'm very appreciative.
So that was Jay Bouwmeester, a little bit of his press conference speaking to the media for the first time since having his cardiac episode back on February 11th during the Anaheim Ducks game. As mentioned before, that Anaheim Ducks game still scheduled for March 11th, if I remember that correctly. So game will be replayed then. So it was interesting kind of to hear this, because I think a lot of us kind of knew what to expect or had expectations of what was going to be said. And, well, I don't think some of us actually got that. I think what a lot of us were expecting was some sort of announcement of retirement from Jay Bouwmeester, but obviously we just get the pretty much it's a given news that he wasn't going to play in the playoffs or in the rest of the regular season. This specifically is kind of a strange moment. It would be weird, to have, the thoughts of retirement or moving on from hockey just kind of suddenly thrust upon you. And I don't think Jay was ready to, actually publicly say anything like that. And I'm not sure if, that's what Doug Armstrong or if any of the other St. Louis media were expecting. So it was kind of a little bit of an awkward conference. Again, you can watch the entire thing on St. Louis Blues channel on YouTube or on their website. It's a full 20-minute interview about his status. Again, he's still considering his options and weighing in on the future for playing hockey. Again, I can't see it. Coming from, a family with medical background, with a lot of expertise in, something like heart issues or heart trauma, I can understand why pretty much anybody with less of a heart or the athleticism of Jay Bouwmeester would just immediately want to just call it quits and hang up the skates. But since it's Jay Bouwmeester, I also understand if he wants to continue playing in spite of the fact that it's almost life-threatening to do so, to play one of the most, physically taxing sports in basically the world. So again, it was a strange kind of press conference to hear. And it also, Jay is just always a light-spirited guy. He's a, kind of a softer spoken, good veteran presence for the Blues nowadays. But I mean, he's 35. He now has the equivalent of a pacemaker right below his chest. His contract with the Blues comes off the books this season. So again, I'm not really certain where he wants to go from here. Well, I feel like I know where he wants to go from here, but at some point you have to understand the physiology of your body, especially when it comes to such a unique and unfortunate heart problem, which, he's reconciled with, and he's obviously fine and he's doing well and he feels okay. He said he's never really fully aware, or he's not too aware of the fact that he's got this ICD implanted in his chest. But I mean, he's still aware that it's there. I mean, sometimes he just might forget about it a little bit, but he's still aware that it was there. So, as far as where Jay Bouwmeester goes after the regular season and the playoffs, I don't know. I kind of tend to doubt that the Blues might want to try and re-sign him. I'm not sure if any other team would really want to think of re-signing him. I mean, in all fairness, he's still an elite defenseman. He was playing an elite shutdown role with the Blues right up to the point where he has this horrific, 1 in a million type of strange episodes. But at some point, I mean, you got to consider a guy's health before you consider him as a hockey asset. You always got to consider the health of a player first. So that's why I also think, a guy like Marco Scandella might end up sticking around, depending on how the discussions for Alex Pietrangelo continue. Again, we finally got a tiny little update on that, but it still seems like it's business as usual with Alex Pietrangelo, where they're focused on getting the cup. He's focused on getting another cup. We let the chips fall where they may once that ends, for good or for bad. Again, he's a St. Louis Blue. I can't see him going much of anywhere else, but we'll see. And that obviously will impact Marco Scandella's possibility of re-signing with the Blues. And I think he'd do well. I think he plays exactly the style of hockey that the Blues want to see him play. Again, he's a welcome addition to the penalty kill, and he's been solid on it in his first few games. But again, it's all going to come down to the cap. It's going to come down to how large the cap actually is come next season, because we don't know. It comes down to if the Blues agree to terms with Alex Pietrangelo, which I sure as hell hope they do. It's your captain. I mean, 27's going to get hung up into the rafters. I don't think anybody's questioning that. 27, Pietrangelo's literally the first St. Louis Blue ever to touch the cup and raise the cup. 27's going to go to the rafters. He's the captain, for goodness sakes. So whether or not they actually figure out terms and sign him and things like that, I'm really hoping that they figure something out, even if it turns into an overpay. And of course, we're still going to be thinking about the precedent set with Roman Josi, who's in almost the exact situation as Alex Pietrangelo. Captain of the team, elite defenseman, done everything for their particular franchise that you could possibly ask for. And Roman Josi basically gets $9 million. So will Pietrangelo get that? Will he get more? I'm not sure. But obviously that's going to be Doug Armstrong's number one priority after the playoffs and the regular season. And I know that they just said that Jay Bouwmeester is not going to play any of the playoffs. But it was so silly to me to think of this. But just picture this scenario. If the Blues get to the Stanley Cup final, let's say they, by some complete impossible stroke of God, they go, 3-0 or something like that. Do you consider, roll with me on this, do you consider for one game, just one game, putting Jay Bouwmeester on the ice and running him like maybe like 5 minutes of ice time, like bottom line with Bortuzzo or Dunn or somebody? Do you consider that? Do you consider running a guy with potential heart problems but still a very athletic guy on your bottom line, like for the last game of the Stanley Cup final, the game where literally everything is put on the line and murder may as well be legal, just to see Jay Bouwmeester's name get on that cup one more time? I would love that. I do not see that happening at all, of course. But like just for the one game, just to say, yes, he was part of this team and his name gets on the cup. I would love to actually see that. But I doubt it'll happen. That would just be fun for me. Spring training is underway in the MLB. It's funny and ironic. The one game so far that I managed to watch for the Cardinals was, of course, against the Houston Astros. And I can't even remember what the pitcher's name was, but somebody did actually hit an Astros player. This is nowhere near close to ending. And I'm a fan of baseball. And I'm a huge fan of the Cardinals. Obviously, it goes without saying. St. Louis is, for all intents and purposes, a baseball town and always has been. But I'm genuinely more interested in watching the Astros probably this year and this year alone than I am the Cardinals. There have been 7 batters hit by pitches against the Astros. 7 Astros batters have been hit by pitchers, and it's spring training in February. In February. Most people that are listening to this, it's probably like 25 degrees out, and you've got a winter blizzard heading your way. This is only the beginning. This is only the beginning. And yeah, you've got Rob Manfred putting out a memorandum telling teams don't hit batters or there will be consequences. Oh, consequences like he gave to the Astros players? Yeah. Yeah, all right, I'll take that. Sure. This is only going to be the beginning. I want to know the number of like bench clearing brawls that we're going to have between the Astros and insert team here. I'm pretty sure the Cardinals, one of their first series of this season is against the Astros. I think I was trying to look up their schedule. I don't recall correctly. But I mean, Dodgers, Astros, Yankees, Astros, maybe even like Washington Nationals, Astros. I think they played today or maybe tomorrow. That's all going to be must-watch television. It's going to be insane. And it's almost to the point, I was listening to a couple of radio shows today, like if you're Houston and you've already seen this and you know that it's only going to get worse. The nightmare is going to continue. You have to endure this for 162 games plus. As what I would argue is the most hated team in baseball right now. And yes, I put them over the Yankees just because they're the Yankees. If you have to do this for 162 games, do you not think that the players just call it? Do you not think the players just mail it in for the season? Because right now, they're still projected to do well. Aside from the fact that, yes, they are in fact cheaters, and they cheated during the 2017 season. We don't know for sure on the 2018 and 19 season. They still have a good roster. They still have a good team with them. If you're the Astros players, are you going to try and just take it in the teeth? Because that's where every single pitcher is going to be aiming for every batter. And I get, okay, maybe I'm sure a lot of the MLB guys know, like some of these new guys, some of these fresh faces, some of the ones that were not even involved with the 2017 World Series, they'll know not to try and intentionally hit them. But if you're a guy like Jose Altuve, if you're a guy like Alex Bregman, if you're a guy like, I'm trying to think of, some of the other players, even Justin Verlander. Justin Verlander knew about it. Obviously, he wasn't taking too many of the garbage cans as help. But if you're some of these veteran guys with the Houston Astros that have been caught cheating, what is your game plan to endure this nightmare? I mean, it's 100+ mile an hour fastballs that you're going to be taken to the back, you're going to be taken to the numbers, you're going to be taken to the helmet for 162 games over 6 months, over 5 months, whatever. Oh boy. All I know is I am probably more excited for Astros baseball than I possibly am the Cardinals. And I like the Cardinals team. I like the Cardinals' direction that they are going. After the whole Mike Matheny fallout, basically starting from the end of the 2013 World Series, I like where the team is going. So, will we see the Astros try and mail it in and just call it a season because they know they're going to get beat down physically by a bunch of baseballs? Or are they still going to try and perform and, quote-unquote, shut all of us up? I don't know. They can try to shut us up, but they're not going to. None of us are ever going to stop talking about this until, A, the World Series title is vacated, or B, there's an asterisk on the 2017 Houston Astros, or C, the players somehow get individually punished. And of all three of those options, I might see option B happening where they put an asterisk on. The Houston asterisks. I tried that. I failed that miserably. But no one's ever going to be satisfied. This is not going to end. And if you think at some point this might actually end, ask the New York Rangers and what they think about the New York Rangers. Ask the New York Yankees what they think about A-Rod. That's all I'll say for the rest of that. That'll wrap it up for the show. We've got 12 minutes until the top of the hour when the Blues are going to play the Islanders at Enterprise Center, 7 p.m. Central Time. You can find telecasts on Fox Sports Midwest, radio call on ESPN 101.1. Thank you all very much for listening. My name has been Philip Miller. You've been listening to the hashtag BRP, the Blues Rants podcast. I want to get it trending so bad, even though I know it won't happen. Thank you all very much for listening. Let's go Blues. Enjoy the game tonight, everybody.